as we're achieving or as we're looking for those external validations or affirmations, oftentimes we start to lose track of what it is that we even need. And so coming back home to those values and those needs are so important for us to just really re-engage with who we are at our core. And from that place, then start setting goals.
You are here for a reason, but navigating this human life can be challenging. How do you care for your body, mind, and spirit to make the most of your time here on Earth? How can you harness your incredible human potential? In this podcast, we explore these questions and more to help you craft your best life yet. Welcome to I Am Human. Hi, humans. I'm your host, Dr. Yami, and I am so happy to be here with you today. Thank you so much for subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. It means so much to us, and we appreciate it so much. To be human means to doubt yourself. And it also means to embrace who you are authentically so that you can move forward with confidence and love. And our guest today, she helps her clients get to this place where they're able to figure out their authentic selves, what their values are, and move forward in a way that is more aligned with themselves. Kamini Wood, a certified life coach, helps high achievers heal their relationships with themselves. She helps people take courageous steps in identifying limiting beliefs, reasons for stagnation, and overcoming self-doubt in order to live a fulfilling professional and personal life. She is the creator of Authentic Me and CEO of Live Joy Your Way, a coaching company helping high performers and overachievers who have seen success through old-rooted traditional metrics reestablish their relational self-awareness. And in this episode, we talk about her story, how she became interested in helping high achievers heal the relationship with themselves, what it means to be a high achiever. We talk about limiting beliefs, some examples of those. We talk about imposter syndrome, why it happens. We talk about learning to become more authentic and embrace who we truly are. We talk about work-life balance. We talk about people pleasing. She gave me some tips because this next year is going to be my year of no. So I'm learning to unlearn the people pleasing. So it's a really great episode. It's short and sweet. I think that you will find lots of value in there. And even if you've heard all of this before, repetition is really what helps cement these things, or maybe it'll prompt you to start working on some of these different tools, different ways of looking at life so that you can feel better and move forward in a more authentic way. So I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Have a fantastic day. And now let's welcome Kamini Wood. The information on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not meant to replace careful evaluation and treatment. If you have concerns about your health or well-being, please consult a healthcare professional. Kamini Wood, welcome to I Am Human. It is such a pleasure to have you here and to get to know you today.
I am so excited to be here with you.
All right, well, let's start from the beginning. How did you become interested in helping high achievers heal their relationship with themselves?
Because that is who I am. I am a high achiever who found herself really holding herself back. I was anxiety-ridden, people-pleasing, perfectionist, all of the things. And I went through my own self-growth transformation and really recognized not only was I meant to go through that experience for my own self and for the benefit of showing up differently as a mother, but also because I was in a position to now take what I have experienced, train, learn more, and help others do the same.
I love that. I was reading a little bit on your website and in your bio. Do you feel that there's certain life circumstances that caused you to become a high achiever? And later I want to ask you what your definition of a high achiever is, because I think we throw these terms around too. It'd be
Yeah.
nice to define that. Or do you think there's a genetic basis for this? I'd love to know what you think about it.
I think it's all of the above, perhaps. I think the way we show up in this world is generally affected by culture, society, family, and then our own personality. And I would say that I am a mix of all of those things put together. And I do think that high achiever is a broad definition. I think many of us find ourselves as achievers. And, this definition of high achiever, maybe a lot of people think that it's, well, those people who are professionals or they're succeeding in certain, high performance areas of the world, of their business or their whatever is going on in their life. The way that I look at a high achiever is somebody who just really continues to push themselves. I say that a high achiever tends to be somebody who's continuing to next. They find themselves nexting is what I routinely call it, which is I'm doing this thing. And then when I get there, I'm going to do this next thing. And then when I get there, I'm going to do this next thing. And there's not a whole lot of slowing down, pausing, recognizing how far you've come, and really just allowing yourself to be a human being. We tend to find ourselves with the high achievers to just be human doings. It's just all about the things that we can get done versus how are we showing up and who are we being.
I love how you define that, because that resonates with me a lot. It's basically like, okay, how much can I achieve? Because achievement itself becomes the thing that we're chasing. And it's almost like if you're not continuously achieving something, sometimes you can feel kind of sad and lost and like, what am I even doing here if I'm not working on some kind of achievement? So that becomes like your pattern and what you get used to.
Oh my gosh. And it becomes almost, I say this with love, but it becomes almost like an addiction, right? Because if I'm not doing that thing, then to your point, we feel lost, we feel empty. Many of my clients that I end up working with, we do that shift from, okay, let's shift back into being a human being and not a human doing. And so often that's a conversation we have, which is, well, I get to, 4:00 in the afternoon and I've completed my list and then I feel aimless. And so we work on, well, what if it's not about doing? What if it's just about existing and being and just reconnecting with yourself? And it can feel very odd for those that are used to just doing all the time.
Yeah. And you're right that a lot of it is cultural too, because I feel like here we're in the United States and we do have a culture of productivity and achievement and reaching goals. I mean, like right now, a big thing is manifesting, which in a way is like, how much more can I achieve through this manifestation process? But also sometimes ethnic backgrounds. Like I come from Latin American community, and I know that it's very similar to some other communities in that, you are seen as having been successful if there's certain careers that you can achieve, right? Like doctor, lawyer, engineer, basically those are the three that counted when I was a kid. Those are the ones that counted when I was a kid. But then you learn to have this source of validation of like, yes, you're doing the right thing. You are seen as being appropriate. You're seen as being good by your elders. And then that just becomes sort of this game that we play. So thank you so much for defining that. Well, let's talk a little bit about limiting beliefs, because I know that's something else that you work with your clients. What are limiting beliefs, and what are some examples of some typical limiting beliefs that we may have?
Yeah, so my definition of a limiting belief is really just a false narrative that we have taken on as true. Many of the common false beliefs that I end up working with a lot of clients on are I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not deserving, which leads into a lot of imposter syndrome, and I'm not lovable. Those are really four of the main ones that I'm seeing more often than not. The I'm not enough or I'm not good enough, one of those two tends to be very, very common. What I'm noticing about those false beliefs is that oftentimes it stems from a past experience. And I think people get caught up on this. They think that, well, my life was actually fine. It wasn't traumatic. There was no big trauma that I experienced. And what I say to people is that more times it's not about a big trauma that we've had in life. It's about just experiences that we've had. And when we're younger, things are either said to us or we have an experience that we then make mean something to ourselves, right? So for me personally, I grew up in a predominantly white town in Connecticut. I went to school, thought everything was perfectly fine, had no idea that I was quote unquote different. Showed up and everybody else looks different from me. I have a name like Kamini, so clearly nobody has a name anywhere near similar to that. And I'm darker than everybody else. And so immediately there was this, I'm different. I don't belong. So that's another false belief that can be created. Nobody said that to me. That was just an experience that I had. You know, when kids looked at me different or said, what type of name is Kamini? They didn't mean anything really harmful or traumatic by that. But my little 5-year-old self made that mean, oh gosh, I'm different. I don't belong here. Right. And so then that belief stays kind of in the subconscious and then things get filtered through it throughout life. So for me personally, that I don't belong then became, well, how can I find acceptance? And my little self had decided that it was going to come through people pleasing and making sure everybody was happy with me, because then that meant some type of acceptance. And so, you know, when we can track back what some of those false beliefs are, we can then say, okay, well, now today, what's actually true versus what did my 5-year-old self think? What did my 5-year-old self think was true? And then take aligned action based on the current circumstances and what's actually true for us today versus continuing to operate from that old narrative.
Which is really difficult because, like you said, some of these beliefs we've had for decades, and they're so ingrained that it is difficult to separate from the truth or the reality. I mean, it seems like the truth. So how do you help clients start to untangle that and relearn a new belief?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I wish there was like I just do A, B, and C and then it's all done. So I'm going to even use my own self as an example. So my belief again was I don't belong, I'm different. So I've done lots of self-work over the years. And still, when my oldest son was playing lacrosse, which again is a predominantly white sport, at least it's become more diverse in the last couple of years. But when he started, I had the same feeling pop back up. It's a feeling and a narrative, right? That story I had worked on, and yet here I was facing it again. And so the way that I worked through it was slowing down, becoming mindful, right? In the present moment, we're in this present moment right here and right now. What's actually true? Well, what's true is, yes, first of all, I am a different color, but that has nothing to do with whether or not I belong with these other parents. The common ground that we have in this community is that our sons play lacrosse. So then for me, it was breaking down what's true about this particular situation and finding alignment with the individuals within that, and then shifting for myself, you know, the fact that I do belong in this group of people because we have these, you know, ABC things in common, right? So the way that the shift becomes, you know, become mindful, come back to the present moment, because part of it is that we get stuck in the old story. So it's not present day, it's something from the past. So come back to the present moment and then break it down into small bite-sized pieces of what is actually true, what is aligned with your own values and who you are as of today, and then start taking aligned action from there. So for me, my aligned action was connect with 1 or 2 people in the group and find that connectivity. And then from there, grow my network.
Yeah, it's true that some of these things we think that we've put behind us, but then different experiences may trigger it to come back up again because they are deep tracks. But limiting beliefs can also be in some way there to protect us too, because it's from a fear, right? And so when that fear comes up again, our mind is trying to protect us and trying to have us do things that we think are going to keep us safe. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay, you already mentioned this, and I know that it's something that we talk about a lot, but I'd love to hear your take on imposter syndrome. So what is imposter syndrome? Why does it happen? Is it only happening to high achievers, or does everybody experience this?
Let me start with that one. I think that many of us, regardless of whether we define ourselves as a high achiever or not, can experience imposter syndrome. I think even little kids sometimes experience imposter syndrome. And really what it comes down to, it's self-doubt. You know, is this something that I actually can do? Many times with the professionals I work with, if they're in a new role, the imposter syndrome they feel like is, I'm not sure even how I got this role. I didn't deserve it. I'm not capable of it. Oh, this was a fluke, right? I got this by happenstance. chance. They're afraid people are going to find out that they can't do it. Really what that is it's self-doubt and a lack of self-trust, as well as not fully seeing your own abilities and your own capacities. And so the way that we break that down again is, first of all, is paying attention to, even you just mentioned it, our fears. What are we afraid of? What is it that we're scared of? Is it a fear of rejection? Is it a fear of failure? Because when we can start naming the fear, then we can also name what we're really scared of. And even that, we can recognize that we will see our way through it. So if the fear is, I'm going to fail at, this job. Okay, how am I scared? Well, then maybe I might lose my job. Okay, and then what will I do? And most often we recognize that we have the capacity to meet even the thing that we're scared of. And so that's our way to start breaking down what that imposter syndrome is really saying, which is really, I'm afraid that I don't have the capacity to do this. And so what we do is we raise our perception of our self-capacity.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a lovely explanation. I'm curious, are there gender differences when it comes to imposter syndrome, or is it just differences in communicating what we're feeling regarding imposter syndrome?
I personally, from my work, think that it's really about how we're communicating it. It's sort of like the other day I was talking to somebody around many times if a male individual feels depressed, we might not see it as depression. We might see it as anger because the way that it's getting communicated is through a different emotion. And so I think imposter syndrome plays a role similar to that, where the way that we're expressing what we're experiencing just comes out slightly different. I don't think that it's only women experience this or only men or vice versa. I think it's just we communicate it in different ways and we express it in different ways.
Okay, so how can we learn to become more authentic and embrace who we truly are? I know that's one of the cores, one of the foundations that you help your clients with. And I'm sure that really helps us that are high achievers figure out, okay, am I doing these things because I really truly want to do them? Or am I doing them because I think society wants me to do them and I am measuring myself based on a barometer that isn't really truly mine? So how can we start to figure that out?
For me and from my perspective, I feel like the very first thing is to realign with and reconnect with your own core values. So often we assimilate our values from either, again, culturally or from our family. And when we get into adulthood, very rarely are there individuals who slow down to say, what are my core values? Oftentimes we just kind of are an extension of what we were raised with or what we assimilated through our teenage years. So I say the very first thing to do is to slow down and to say, okay, what is actually meaningful to me at this stage in my life? And to recognize that maybe those values are going to shift and change over time, right? So like my values at the age of 20 are not the same ones in my 40s. They've definitely changed, and it's okay to allow that to happen. So if we're really going to be our authentic self, it's doing those check-ins with ourselves and saying, okay, what is meaningful to me? And really, really give yourself permission to name what is meaningful to you outside of what other people are expecting of you, what other people maybe suggest should be meaningful to you. It's owning what's valuable and meaningful to you. And then beyond that, it's also re-engaging with your own personal needs. Again, this is one that gets forgotten because as we're achieving or as we're looking for those external validations or affirmations, oftentimes we start to lose track of what it is that we even need. And so coming back home to those values and those needs are so important for us to just really re-engage with who we are at our core. And from that place, then start setting goals. So often these goals, we start setting them. And if we really are honest with ourselves, most often they are driven by something external. But if we get to know what it is that we value and what it is that we need and use those two things as the foundation piece, from that place, then say, okay, what are the goals that I want to set for myself? Now they're tied back to you as an individual versus somebody outside.
Mm-hmm. What are the signs and symptoms that we're misaligned with our values? And this is probably why clients come to you, I'm assuming. What's happening? Is it depression, anxiety, total breakdowns? What's happening that's bringing people to you and then they're realizing I'm not on track with my values. I need to reset this.
I would say it's a combination of anxiety. It's a combination of just feeling sad, but also stagnation. I think many of the individuals that I end up working with just feel stuck. I mean, they're not sitting there. Some of them aren't saying, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious, I can't think straight. It's really, I'm doing stuff, but I feel like I'm on autopilot. I don't really know why I'm doing this or what the purpose is, or it's the feeling of just being stuck. Like I don't feel like I'm moving myself forward. And that right there says something's not connected, right? Those two wires they're not aligned with each other.
Almost like you feel like you've lost that spark, that interest, that enthusiasm. You're just kind of like, what's next? I'm not sure what to do next. Is, may feel meaningless at some points. Okay, well, that's good to know. Another topic that's very interesting to me is work-life balance. And I've had experts that had all kinds of definitions or even said there's no such thing as balance. So what is your opinion on work-life balance? How does one determine what balance means to them?
My opinion, I don't know if this is the popular opinion or not. I say it's a moving ebb and flow. Work-life balance to me means it's not going to be the same every single day. Some days maybe I'm leaning heavier on the family stuff and other days maybe on the work stuff. So for me, balance is, am I feeling connected to self? Am I feeling like I'm connected to what is mattering and is meaningful to me? And that's how I know that I'm in balance. So some days might be heavier on work. Like for instance, I know today was a heavier work day for me versus later on in the week. I know I'm going to be heavier in the family stuff because we've got school activities happening and doctor's appointments as an example. So I know that for me, that's how my week is going to go. On a different week, it's going to look different. And so what I learned very early on, and I think it was actually when I went from 1 to 2 kids, was that not one thing is going to get 50% and something else is going to get 50%. Instead, it's going to be this balance of maybe something gets 90% of my attention one day while the other gets 10. And then the next day it's going to shift. And eventually, as I allow for that ebb and flow and that back and forth, it's all going to balance itself out.
Yeah. And I think that's important to realize that, especially for those of us that might be perfectionists and want to try to perfectly balance everything, or feel guilty if you're not working on one thing, or feel like you're neglecting your kids if you're working on your work. So I think that's good to know that it can be an ebb and flow, and you can't be everywhere at once. You can't, it's just like impossible to do everything at once. So you do have to prioritize and choose and put your energy where it's important at that time.
And it is so important too to really own that for yourself, because people will have judgment, right? People will give you the side eye or give you a judgment of like, oh, wow, why are you doing that? Or I just recently had a great example of somebody was talking to me about potentially adopting a dog, for instance, and we were trying to work out a phone conversation for me to talk to the organization. And she was getting irritated because I said, well, the 2 days that you've given me, I actually am working late. And so she kind of got a little bit judgy about it and was like, well, how are you going to take care of a dog? And I, of course, I was very kind about it, but I said, this ebb and flows. Some days may be heavier, but, the way that I work my life, there's be balance. There'll be the ability to take care of the dog. So I just offer that because it also is important for you to just own what balance is for you and not allow other people and their judgments to determine whether that's balanced or not.
And I think that goes back to the limiting beliefs too, because sometimes we believe that, and this it just reminds me of motherhood, because I've had a lot of us moms, we've had mom guilt,
Yes.
about everything possible. But, these limiting beliefs is a good mom does crafts with their children. And I don't know why this stressed me out so much, because I really thought that there were so many reasons I wasn't a good mom. And one of those was that I really did not like doing crafts. I don't have the patience for it. I'm not detail oriented. Plus I had 2 boys who they didn't want to sit down and do crafts anyway. But for some reason, I had this thing in my brain that a good mom does crafts with their children, until finally I'm just like, I don't have to do crafts with my kids. I can be a mom that doesn't do crafts. I do these other things and not crafts. But why did it take me so many years to come to that and feel like this does not mean I'm a bad mom? But also I think sometimes we believe other people think that about, like we're judging ourselves, like we're making these assumptions about other people. Nobody cared that I didn't do crafts with my kids, but I was putting so much pressure on myself for that.
Right. But also, Dr. Yami, it's about the fact that, like, even if they were judging, it's like, let them judge. At the end of the
Right.
day, your kiddos were happy. They knew you loved them. And by the way, I didn't do crafts either.
Awesome. Non-crafts mom club. So watch, it'll be ironic. And then I'll end up having grandkids and suddenly I'll like want to do crafts all the time with
Crafts
them.
with
We'll
them.
see.
Yeah.
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 So I think that that's important too. What you're saying is we have to let go of those judgments, both from ourselves and what we think other people are judging us
Yeah,
for,
absolutely.
because that helps get us back on track. Okay, so when you work with a client and you're working with all these things and helping them, what does it look like once you've aligned with your values and you feel that you're working on these, you feel like you're in a good place? What can that look like for a client?
So I will just share that with most of my clients, when they start feeling that way, particularly they're starting to see things differently, they will one of a couple things. One, they will start evaluating how they're showing up in a different way. And so they'll make changes to maybe, like if we're talking professionally, we might see that they start figuring out what they want to do in terms of taking their career to the next level or potentially just making a shift. I've had clients who have fought the idea of starting their own business because it wasn't the thing to do, but it was really just imposter syndrome that held them back. Other clients, once they start aligning with their values, they're understanding themselves in a deeper way. And suddenly now their relationships take on a whole new meaning, or they're recognizing, wow, I've been over functioning in a relationship and this isn't healthy for me. And I'm ready to actually make a change or to set some boundaries. And so I've seen my clients shift in their relationships. Other clients of mine, I also work with teenagers and young adults. And so a lot of them are coming into this idea of this recognition of who they are and what's important to them. And they're stepping into that and being able to use their voice and start making decisions for what it is that they actually want, especially the emerging adults. You know, most often emerging adults aren't really sure what it is that they should do once they graduate college. And so being able to come back home to what's important to them outside of what their parents believe. And it's not to say that their parents are wrong in any regards, but it's really letting them have agency. They then start making decisions for themselves, both professionally and personally, and start really taking ownership of that. And I see them shift in their confidence in how they see themselves. And that ability to then be able to take that into things like relationships or into a professional atmosphere, you show up completely different from before.
I love that. And I love that you work with teens. What a gift it is to them at, this early stage in their life to be able to learn some of these concepts and have these tools to use as they grow and change and evolve, because it's not stuff that we learn in school. We just have to kind of make it through and hope everything goes okay. And then when we have enough pain, that's when we reach out and either work with a coach or a therapist to try to learn some of these things. But something you said reminded me, and I think this can happen too with teenagers, is people pleasing. So not just what we think our parents expect of us, but we think society expects from us. So do you have any tips for those of us that are people pleasers and what we can do to start shifting that? So I've actually decided that over the next 12 months is my year of no. I don't know if there's a popular book that's the year of yes. I'm going to do the opposite, and it's my year of no, to do those uncomfortable things of saying no to some of the things that I really want to say no to, but I have a really difficult time saying no to. So maybe if you have some tips for that, that would be great.
Oh my gosh, I love that you're doing that, because I was about to say that my very first tip is, before you say yes, check in with yourself and ask, do I really want to say yes to this? That's number one. Number two is with people pleasing, most often we find that people pleasers will silence themselves and not actually allow themselves to speak their opinion. So when you're involved in a situation and you know that you have a different opinion, check in with yourself before you silence, right? Allow yourself to have your voice and your opinion. Those are really two key things that I think that people pleasing is that we overfunction. So we overgive. So before giving or before doing, checking in, like, do I have the capacity to even do this? Am I saying yes because I want to, or because I feel like I have to, or I'm obligated to? And then that third one there, which is just really paying attention to, is this something that's aligned with me? Or is this because I'm afraid of conflict, or I'm afraid of disappointing this person? Because if we're really going to break down people pleasing, a lot of it is a fear of conflict. And that can even be broken down into like a fear of abandonment or a fear of rejection. And so just paying attention to, is it really that I'm just agreeing here and doing because I don't want to have the uncomfortable conversation? And so for those that are really trying to work out of people pleasing, it's recognizing, okay, this might be an uncomfortable conversation, but then giving yourself permission to have that uncomfortable conversation. Because if we don't take that step, if we don't start speaking our mind and using our voice, we're never going to break the pattern of people pleasing.
Mm-hmm. It is a practice though, isn't it? I mean, I hear it gets easier with time, but it's really hard for me.
I mean, I still say that I get caught up in it. Like I, even to this day, have to check in, especially with the conflict avoidance. That's the big one for me, where I will avoid saying the thing that I really think because I don't want to disappoint or bother the other person. And so for me, I have to slow down and say, and name it for myself. It's like, okay, Kamini, you're avoiding this conflict because it seems easier. If we don't speak our mind here, what does that mean long term though? And I really go through that self conversation, because more times than I can count, short term, sure, it feels better, but long term, it's going to cause a bigger issue.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that thing that always ends up catching up to you if you don't take care of it initially, and it makes it harder and harder and harder until you finally have to do it. And you're like, I should have just done it at the beginning.
Yes. Yes.
All right. This is great. Okay. Well, we've learned some really great things, I think, that we can start applying right away. So thank you so much for this. I'd love to move on to the wrap up questions. What do you wish more people knew?
I really do wish that people knew that their uniqueness is really a gift, right? I think so often we spend so much time trying to fit in that we forget that acceptance doesn't mean, or belonging doesn't mean, that we have to be the exact same as other people. And if we could just recognize that our uniqueness is a gift, it would allow for so much more diversity and so much more full conversations to happen.
I love that. And I love this message, especially for young people that are out there navigating the world and think they have to conform or be like other people to be accepted, because it starts young, it starts early. My oldest is in college. And so I had to remind him, be yourself. You know, I just dropped him off for his sophomore year, and he has an apartment with a bunch of guys now. And I could tell he had that deer in headlights look when we dropped him off yesterday. And I'm like, don't try to be like anybody else. Be yourself.
Yes.
And
yes.
People will either like you or not. But, you know, if you're trying to be like somebody else and they like you, it's going to fall apart at some point anyway. So it's easier to just be yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you define success in this lifetime?
Well, I think, first of all, success is defined uniquely by each one of us. I mean, for me personally, success is all around, is there joy? And is there love in what I'm doing and who I'm with? And for me, that means that there's success.
I love it. Very simple. I love that. Is there a goal or a dream that has evaded you, or something that you have left on your bucket list that you'd be willing to share with us?
I mean, I don't know that it's evaded me, because I feel like I'm in the process of doing it, but really it is about trying to help as many people as I can and touch people in a way that makes a positive impact on their life. I mean, that's really a huge goal of mine. The moments that I have clients reflect to me, the difference that just working with me has meant to them it's huge to me. Not because I'm looking for that external affirmation, but because that really is a heart-centered thing for me, of really trying to impact people in a positive way.
Oh, so beautiful. And what does it mean to be human?
To be human to me means we have the gamut of experiences, the gamut of emotions, the ability to make mistakes and missteps and to continue moving forward. And for me, that is what the human experience is.
I love that. Well, Kamini Wood, thank you so much for being on I Am Human and sharing some of your wisdom and experience, working with high achievers and helping us get back on track in life. I appreciate that. Where can listeners connect with you, and what products and services do you offer?
They can connect with me. My website is kaminiwood.com. I do have a free download right there on my website on limiting beliefs. So you can just head over there and you can download the free PDF. And then, of course, I'm on Instagram and Facebook with the handle It's Authentic Me. I do work with people one-on-one. And then also I do have a little mini cast. It's not a podcast. That's full range episodes or little mini 8-minute episodes giving you little tidbits of what's going on in my mind.
That's perfect. I love that. Well, thank you so much for being here today and everything that you do to help others and shine your light. And I hope that you have a very plantastic day.
Thank you, you too. Hi, I'm Kamini, and I am human.
Thank you for listening to another episode of I Am Human. I would be so honored if you subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. We love our listeners and take your feedback seriously. If you have questions or constructive feedback, you can email us at podcast@dryami.com. That's podcast@doctoryami.com. I am your host, Dr. Yami Cazorla-Lancaster. I Am Human is produced by myself and Alejandra Parra. Graphics designed by Alejandra Parra. Music by Angela Soph with Glowbox Productions and edited by the Castos production team. Remember, human, you are here for a reason. Have fun, explore, and live your life to the fullest.